Suicide is a super heavy but important topic. Hopefully after watching this video, it can help you see the signs and can help you help others if they are struggling. Suicide is a global problem. Statistics from 2022 show that suicide is the third leading cause of death among people who are aged 15 to 19. Around 800,000 people die from suicide each year.
In this video, we're going to be covering risks, signs, and how to help people who might be thinking about committing suicide or just have suicidal ideation. We're just going to give out some things that can be helpful and can help save someone's life. First off, we are going to go over factors that can put people at risk for committing suicide. Suicide stems from biological, psychological, social, and environmental factors. People are more at risk from ages 10 to 25 because they are constantly growing and there are new demands psychologically and socially. Suicide isn't a single causing event, but caused by multiple factors. Vulnerability in people ranges from genetics to their environment. There are many risk factors that can lead up to suicide. Previous suicide attempts is one of the most important risk factors. When someone has attempted before, it shows that the person has acquired the capacity for suicide and is inclined towards death. Another one is mental disorders. A large percentage of mental disorders such as depression, anxiety, antisocial behaviors, schizophrenia, and bipolar and other mood disorders are high risk factors. Youth are more likely to commit suicide with mental disorders more than people who don't have them. Alcohol and substance abuse increases the likeliness of suicide by almost 2 to 5 times as much. Having a substance abuse disorder can be observed in 25 to 50% of suicide cases. Hopelessness. People with higher rates of disappointment or hopelessness have a higher risk because they are not able to deal with their problems in a healthy way. Chronic pain and illnesses also increase suicide by as much as 2 times. Pre-existing suicide in families. When someone in your family commits suicide, it affects everyone in the family. Suicide can bring out grief, stress, anger, anxiety, and discomfort. This puts your mental health at risk, which in turn put you at risk. Biological factors. Low levels of serotonin have been associated with suicide attempts, mainly with people who have mood-related disorders. Sexual abuse or intercourse. Sexual abuse results in negative health outcomes, sometimes even in suicide. Unprotected sexual contact can lead to a number of things like disease or pregnancy and can increase one's risk of suicide. Now, violence can be linked to most of these suicide attempts. They all play a significant role. People who are physically, sexually, emotionally violated are at a higher and increased risk for a mental disorder, which can lead overall to suicide. Body mass index, body image, and eating disorders. Misconceptions about your image or body weight, signs of body dysmorphia. Lower levels of self-confidence can be a predictor for suicide. Eating disorders are associated with distress. Suicidal ideation and abuse in adolescence can all lead to suicide. Sleep disorders. Sleeping 8 to 10 hours per day has a positive impact on adolescents, but shorter sleeping schedules or times have been directly linked to depression, and it decreases serotonin levels. Sexual orientation. The suicide rate is higher among the LGBTQ community. Then there's gender. Girls attempt suicide more often than boys, but boys overall are more successful in doing it. Immigration can cause stress, and it can also be another risk factor. Experiencing discrimination and heavy change can lead to suicide as well. Another is low socioeconomic income. Kids with a lower socioeconomic income status face problems such as mental disorders and are more likely to commit suicide than those from a higher socioeconomic status. Lack of coping skills, exposure to negative life events, and especially an inability to cope healthily can lead to suicide. Another thing that we wanted to talk about next to risks is social support. And social support and suicide and suicidal tendencies have a high negative correlation. So that means when one goes up, the other goes down. And that works for both cases, vice versa. Social support is really needed for everyone. And so when social support goes up, suicidal tendencies tend to go down. And when suicidal tendencies go up, social support is usually at a high low. And so someone who lacks social support doesn't really have anybody to rely on or to be able to talk to about these hard times. So just make sure that you and the people around you have a really good social support system, and maybe help others and be a support system to others so that you can maybe help prevent this risk and help prevent someone from committing suicide. Next, we are going to talk about behaviors in people who are thinking about committing suicide or people who have suicidal ideation. Now, someone might not tell you that they're thinking of committing suicide, but they might be able to show you between the signs and how they act and how their behaviors are leading up to it. Suicide awareness and education are good strategies to help someone who can be at risk, and knowing what these signs are can help save someone's life. A lot of these behaviors can show up in different ways. Some of these ways are having trouble concentrating or thinking clearly, giving away belongings. A lot of people who are thinking about committing suicide usually give away their belongings and just stuff that are important to them so that they know that it's kept safe. People who are also talking about going away is a sign. Being calm after a period of anxiety can also be a sign. People who are losing interest in activities or things that they love to do before, so maybe dropping out of sports or extracurriculars. People who are thinking about committing suicide may also partake in self-destructive behaviors such as heavily drinking or using drugs or cutting themselves, or even things such as like reckless speeding. People can pull away from their friends, or they may not be socially active anymore. They could also have trouble in school or work. They could be talking about death or suicide themselves. Another common one is people who joke about suicide. So things such as, I'm going to kill myself, or this is my 13th reason why could be a sign. And I know these are jokes, but they can also have a double meaning to them. And it's better to be safe than sorry. Some other signs are talking about feeling hopeless or guilty, changing your eating habits, just a loss of appetite, or maybe more eating, writing a letter or a will can also be a sign. Randomly saying I love you, or just an over amount of affection that's more abnormal for the person. Another thing is they can be arranging a way to take their life. So things such as like buying pills or certain types of medicine, or buying a gun, just a way to take their life. So these are the signs that you want to look out for, and just looking for these can help someone.
I have a personal experience I'd like to share about suicide. My uncle a few years ago committed suicide, and none of us really knew that he was going to do it, but I wish I would have, because I would have helped him and helped try to prevent it. My uncle was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he'd been in in and out of jail for a few years here and there, but we had no idea it was getting to the point it was. And he lives in Texas and he's a divorced dad, and his kids would call him every night, and they tried to call him one night and he didn't answer. And so my grandma tried to call him and he didn't answer her either. And we tried to call him and he didn't answer my family, so we just called the cops and asked him to do a wellness check. They went over to his apartment and it was dark and nobody was answering. And they don't have a warrant to search if they don't have a reason to. So they came back the next day because nobody had heard from him the next day either. And they were able to go in and they found out that he committed suicide. And it was really, really hard for me and my family to go through this time because we had no idea he was struggling so bad. And if we would have known, we would have tried to prevent it in some ways or get him the help that he needed. And so it's really important to check up on people. Even when they seem like they're doing okay, that's people that need the most help. Because nobody ever checks up on them because they just seem happy and whatever. But you need to make sure that you're checking on people even if they seem like they're okay. Because everybody has struggles that they go through. And we do not want that to lead to suicide. And so I know how hard it can be to go through suicide. But I know how important it is to prevent it as well. So it's super important to prevent suicide if possible. And I think this video is going to be super helpful in seeing those risk factors and knowing how to prevent that for people that you love and even yourself at times. And just know that you're not alone if you have to go through it. So how can you help someone who is struggling with suicide and how to handle it? Here are a few things you can do. Ask them directly you're worried that they might be thinking of suicide. If you tell someone directly, they might be more open to sharing with you. Listen to them. One of the most important things you can do for somebody in this situation is listen to them. Try not to interrupt or add your feelings to the conversation. Just listen to them and let them explain how they are feeling and why they are feeling this way. This will help you when you need to go help them, so you know exactly what they're struggling with. Accept what they're saying and take them seriously. If you don't act like this is a serious problem, it won't become a serious problem, and it could lead to having them commit suicide no matter what. Let them know you care and are concerned. A lot of people that want to commit suicide don't know they are cared about. So if you let them know that you care about what they're feeling and what they are going through, they're more likely to open up to you because you care about them. If they are in danger of hurting themselves, stay with them. Do not leave them alone because it could cause a lot more harm than just leaving them alone. We don't want to do that. Encourage them to get help and help them get the help they need. So you can say, hey, you might need to go talk to a therapist or talk to somebody about this. And you can be the one to initiate that connection with that person they need to get help from. And make sure you are staying well yourself. Helping someone can become physically and mentally exhausting, and so it's important that you keep your well-being up too. Some treatments that can help someone who is struggling is psychotherapy, psychosocial interventions, DBT, and safety planning interventions.
So in conclusion, we talked about some risks, some signs, and how to help someone who is thinking about suicide. I wanted to put a disclaimer in here talking about how when someone close to you commits suicide, it isn't your fault, and suicide is a collective responsibility, and it's not always their fault too. I wanted to also say, if you or someone you know are thinking about suicide or just have suicidal thoughts, there's always someone to talk to. Some resources you can contact are Safe UT for Utah. You can call or text the 988 crisis suicide and lifeline. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK talk, and the teen line is 800-TLC TEEN teen. These resources are here for you, and you can use them, and they are really helpful.